Traders, this morning I woke up to some unfortunate news that some of my students and clients had lost max allocation with Myforexfunds funding. And I'm sure a lot of you are in that same situation, whether you had max allocation or you had slightly smaller accounts. What I wanted to do in this video is offer my perspective, my stance from a psychological perspective, from a performance coaching perspective, an objective overview on how you can approach this certain situation. Because no doubt this situation is challenging and it's probably left a lot of you frustrated and angry. So I wanted to share the perspective that I shared with my clients and my students because it may be useful at this time. Now, the first little message or lesson I passed on to some of my students and clients is that the very skill they developed as a trader to get them funded in the first place with any funded company is the skill that they will never lose. And the knowledge they have, the trading plan they've developed, the intuitive sense for the market they've developed, the skill they've learned to be able to read the market and execute in the market and risk manage and make decisions, and the knowledge they've generated as a trader, they will never lose. And it's that very skill that they've developed to get them funded in the first place that they can continue to replicate and continue to implement over and over and over. And I wanted to reiterate to them that yes, it is a challenging situation. However, the skills that you've gained, you're never going to lose. And those skills that got you there in the first place can be replicated again. And my message to them was very encouraging. Use this as a driving force to recognize the fact that yes, you may have lost capital, but you're never going to lose a skill that allows you to get more and more capital. And you can continue to utilize that skill to pick up more funding and more capital and get yourself back to the place you were, if not in a better position moving forward as well. So I really reiterated that message to them, and it's no different to any of you watching. The skill that you develop to get to the point of being able to get funded is a skill that you're never going to lose, and it's a skill that you can continue to replicate time in and time again. The second message and lesson that we had was a little bit more of a harder bullet to bite, but it was really a lesson for everybody in terms of diversification and recognizing that nobody really knows what's going to happen to the prop firm industry moving forward. So it's incredibly important to remain diversified. And what I mean by that is don't necessarily fall in love or be infatuated or addicted to having to be funded from any one individual funded company. But rather recognize that there are a lot of options out there and you want to diversify yourself. Instead of just putting all your eggs in one basket and going with one funded company, have multiple funded companies and diversify your funds across multiple funded companies. So if in the future something like this does happen again, then you have at least diversification and you've got levels of risk. You may lose one funded account, but hey, you still have 3 or 4 other funded accounts with different companies. So continue to diversify your funded companies. And on top of that, don't just rely on the prop firm industry. Don't just rely on funded companies. Have also personal accounts, have personal capital that you're trading, and maybe even do some private investment that you're trading as well. Remain diversified. It's what the best businesses out there do. It's what the best investment firms out there do. They don't rely on investment from any one source because they know if they do, they're liable to that source. And they continue to diversify, have multiple investors, have multiple sources of capital there that they can utilize so that if certain events like this do happen again, they're not at a disadvantage because of them. So lesson number 1, the skill that you've developed to get yourself funded in the first place is a skill that's going to continue to stay with you to continue to get funded in the future and continue to scale up. Lesson number 2, remain diversified. Have capital from multiple different firms, but also be outside the prop firm industry as well. Have personal accounts, maybe even have private investment there as well. Now, the last little lesson here that I wanted to share is something that I've been sharing on this channel for a while. I continue to reiterate the fact that there's no risk or there's no reward without risk. There's no benefit without drawback. They're a pair of opposites. And sometimes in our mind, we can think that a certain thing only has benefits, it only has reward, it only has positives. But sometimes we have events like this that remind us of the fact that there is truly both reward and risk in any endeavor that we pursue, especially prop firms. So please don't be blinded to the fact that there are true risks, there are true drawbacks, there are true disadvantages of being a funded trader you want to be aware of. So a certain exercise that I really promote to my students and my clients before they go for anything, whether full-time trading or going for a prop firm, you have to be aware of the drawbacks, the risks, and the disadvantages. And one of the true risks of the prop firms is that certain things like this can happen. Regulation can happen. Certain prop firms can go under. So the question you're going to be asking yourself is, if this does happen in the future, what is something I can do right now to lower the probability of being impacted by this? How can I lower the probability of this risk happening to me and affecting me? And one of the best things you can do is what I mentioned in the second lesson, is stay diversified. Have multiple different firms, also have capital outside of prop firms. You also want to ask yourself, if this does happen to me in the future, how can I lower the impact? What action steps can I put in to lower the impact of certain events impacting me in the future? A great one is having cash savings, having a cash buffer there. So you're not reliant on a prop firm, you're not reliant on a payout, you're not reliant on these prop firms to have to give you money, because if you are, then you're putting yourself at a disadvantage and you're exposing yourself to more risk. So lesson number 3 is always be aware that there's going to be risks, there's going to be drawbacks, there's going to be disadvantages, and you want to be aware of as many of these as you possibly can in advance, and you want to prepare for them as much as you can in advance. Doesn't mean that you have to know every single thing that can go wrong, but you want to just use this as a thought exercise to realize first and foremost that there are risks. Try and think of as many of them as you can, and try and prepare for as many of them as you can. But if you implement lesson 1, 2, and 3, you're putting yourself at a great advantage with these prop firms. Okay? Recognize they'll never be able to take the skill away from you of being a successful, consistently profitable trader. Remain diversified, and always be aware that there are risks in any endeavor you pursue. Be prepared for them as best you can, and plan contingencies.